Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on August the 4th, 2022. For the record, it's 6:30, and I will do the roll call. Please say yes, here or present when I call your name. Mayor Maxton?
Here.
Councilmember Stroop?
Here.
Elizondo?
Here.
Bliss? Here. Kerner?
Here.
Parker?
Here.
And Menchow.
Present.
With 7 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As a reminder to everybody, tonight's meeting is being live streamed. I would like to thank everybody who is attending here either in person or on live stream. As a reminder for those that are here tonight and that would like to speak as part of the meeting tonight, I'd ask that everybody please use the mic that's up here. So that way those that are listening to us on live streaming will be able to hear what you have to say. If you do speak, I'd ask that for residents or non-city officials, please state if you're a Fair Oaks Ranch resident or not. And for all the city personnel that are here, when you have the opportunity to speak, please state your name and what directorate that you're speaking from. From there, we'll move on to citizens to be heard. We didn't have anybody sign up to speak as part of citizens to be heard. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to speak as part of this but did not have an opportunity to sign up? And with that, then we'll move on to presentations. And the first presentation, the only presentation that we have tonight, is the introduction of a new employee. Over to Joanna for the introduction of our new police officer.
Thank you, Mayor. Joanna Merrill, Director of Human Resources and Communications. And it is my honor tonight to introduce our most recent new hire, Alan Russell. Alan, if you will stand up and come join me up here in the spotlight. Alan comes to us as a recent graduate out of ACOG, which is the Regional Law Enforcement Academy. He comes from Schertz, Texas, and right now he actually has a couple of extra certifications that he comes to us with, which we obviously love. He's certified in threat mitigation and has his basic canine handling certification as well, so that's kind of a nice addition to the canine handler we already have. And previous work history, he comes to us with a history in security as a background as well, and worked with a canine in his previous life as well. So we welcome Alan Russell as our newest police officer, so join me in congratulating him.
And Officer Russell, it's great to have you here tonight, and welcome to the team. And along with you tonight, you brought your wife, Erica, joining you, and even more impressive is your father that's here tonight.
Looks like we've got a
who's
legacy.
also a police officer, following in his footsteps.
Well, perfect. If we could get one more shot of you and your family, that would be fantastic. If y'all wouldn't mind joining us up here at the front, we'll get you guys right there in the middle. And Casey here will take a picture of you. Thank you so much.
It's all yours. And thank you all for being here tonight. It's a pleasure. That completes the presentations that we had for this evening. We'll move on to our consent agenda. We did have 2 items on the consent agenda for tonight. First is the approval of the July 21st, 2022 regular city council meeting minutes. And second is the approval of the Councilmember Bliss's absence from the July 21st, 2022 regular city council meeting. Is there any council member that would like to remove an item from consent into consideration and discussion items.
I'd like to take off item 6, please.
Okay? Anybody else? Then for tonight, the consent agenda will include the approval of the July 21st, 2022 regular city council meeting minutes. Could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
Laura, in a second.
Second.
Chesley? All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Next, we'll move on to consideration and discussion items. The first item that we have up tonight is the approval of Councilmember Bliss's absence from the July 21st, 2022 regular city council meeting. And I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull it off because the way the agenda items talks about personal reasons. I had COVID, and I fought with it until right before council and tested positive early Friday morning. But in the end, it was a good decision I didn't come because I ended up with COVID. But just wanted to say that.
Then could I get a motion to approve Can I get a motion to approve Councilmember Bliss's absence from the July 21st, 2022 City Council meeting?
So moved.
Roy, in a second.
I second. Yep. Give it to Emily.
Everybody.
I have Roy and Emily, first and second. Are there any other discussion with the item from council members? With that, then we'll go ahead and vote on the item. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Then the item is approved. The motion is approved. With that, we'll move on to our second consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and the possible action to approve the proposed fiscal year 2022-23 Municipal Development District budget. And I'll turn it over to Mike Lovelace.
Hello, I'm Mike Lovelace. I'm the treasurer of the MDD, and I'm here to comply with our bylaws, which say that we will present an annual budget to council. If we can flip to, there we go. Not a lot of changes in the upcoming budget, other than we anticipate seeing a little bit more in the way of interest income as rates continue to rise. So a slight increase there. Supplies and training stays the same. And the only thing else is that we expect a slight increase in auditor fees over this current year. Otherwise, what that brings us to is about $375,000 that we'll bring into our reserves and have available for projects. Do you guys have any questions? Pretty straightforward budget.
No questions? With that, then, could I get a motion to approve the FY 22-23 MDD budget as presented?
I so move.
From Laura,
Second.
from Roy. Any other discussion from council? With that, then we'll go ahead and vote on this.
So actually, I do have a comment, sorry.
Go ahead.
So just wanted to let council know that currently we still have that money for the Civic Center and the grant within our allocated grant budget. I believe the grant due date for that is coming up here. So as a council, we're going to have to decide what we want to do to go back to the MDD to decide if we want to extend that or the contract will expire. So we currently still have it in the budget, but it may not be there next year if we don't take action. Okay.
Any other comments from council? With that, then we'll go ahead and vote on the motion to approve the FY 22-23 MDD budget as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
With that, then we'll move on to our last consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and possible action authorizing the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement between the Bernie Independent School District and the City of Fair Oaks Ranch for the School Resource Officer Program. And I'll turn it over to our Chief of Police, Tim Mooring.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just to give a brief recap on the history. Just like to recognize a member of our audience here is Hector Hernandez. Been working with Hector for some number of years now. He's the Director of Safety and Security for the ISD, and been instrumental in this program when we first started initially developing it about last year. We had originally in the SAP to add one SRO. Unfortunately, the events that unfolded in Uvalde at the end of the school year kind of exacerbated and expedited the need for having that second one, which what brings us here today. So. A little background on the Sro Program. In response to that tragedy and with the partnership we have with the ISD and Hector, we are working on the Sro Program to be the first Sro Program here at Fair Oaks and for our Fair Oaks elementary schools. With the advent of Van Robb Elementary a couple years ago, we saw the need for it a couple years back and started developing this program. Main basis point for the entire program is the enhanced safety and security of the students and the teachers and the staff and the guests that arrive at that school. Coupled with that, and I think an added benefit, is the community outreach and the partnership we get with the ISD and those officers get with those students and teachers. So the relationships we've had with our elementary schools prior to this has been kind of hit or miss. We had good relationships with the administrative staff, some of the parents we knew, but our presence in schools is relatively limited, and we look to increase that and our community outreach that way. This program with the ISD, the MOU, the funds would be covered at a 60-40 split, with the ISD covering 60% of the costs and the city covering 40% of the costs for those two new FTEs, which are the SROs. This covers all training, time spent on schools, any school-related function would be split 60-40. Anything that we would need the officer for from a police standpoint or a city standpoint will be covered by the city. It includes overtime, uniforms, some equipment, training, things of that sort. Outside the normal school hours, part of the MOU also is to ensure that our officer is on campus every day that the students are on campus. So the vacations will be built around school vacations, summer vacations, so the officer will always be there. If some reason why the officer can't be there, then we're amending our policy to be able to supplement an officer in the school during that absence. During the summertime or the extended periods of leave, those SROs will help supplement two different parts. One, it'll help ease some of the load that we see in CID over the summer months. And on top of that, they'll take over some of our summer community programs, especially our Junior Police Academy and some of the other ones that are currently in development right now. So they'll be our go-to people for our community outreach, especially when it comes to kiddos. So outside that, like I said, it was part of one of our strategic action plans that we've had for a couple of years now, looking to implement it this year. I want to thank Hector and the ISD for everything that they've done for us and helping us expedite this process through the past crazy 8 weeks. But here we are, and we look to council's approval to approve these positions. I'm not sure if Ms. Maples wants to add anything.
Questions for Chief? Go ahead.
I have one question. So the 60-40 cost sharing, was that based off of the fact that 60% of the time of a calendar year, the school is essentially in session, and the other 40%, they would be essentially working for the city?
It changed a bit with the Uvalde situation. The original SAP or the original MOU that we were working on with the school district, the cost split was 75-25. And like I said, we were only planning on one at that time. I think with the advent, I think we added a total of 6 SRO positions, correct? Across the ISD. I think that might have changed that split a little bit from a cost sharing standpoint, is why we went to a 60-40. So I believe that's the history. I'm not sure if you're. So.
It started off across.
They're gonna make you yell at you if you don't talk.
I don't know if y'all want to give me a microphone. It started off historically with the school district at a 75-25 split, because we had about 75% of the time the officers spent throughout the year with us. So that other 25% went back to the city. We're still going to have that same amount of time, but we reduced the percentage just a little bit to the 60%, because now we have 12 officers now that hit us all at one time. So fortunately and thankfully, we've all come to an agreement that the 60-40 split was pretty fair. And Bernie has agreed to that, as well as Kendall County. So, thank you.
Roy?
Yes, are there any of the funds for this coming from any entities other than the school district or our PD?
Not
For
at
instance-
this time. Like you're referring to grants or
Yeah, or
things like
money
that?
from the state or anything?
Not at this time, but in the wake of Uvalde, there are all kinds of federal grants and state grants that are coming down. So the school district and the different law enforcement agencies that we work with, we are going to do our best to exploit those grants. So we're going to grab everyone that we can to help supplement. So, yes.
Thank you.
I ask when you do that, that you please don't just use it to cover the ISD portion of the costs, and that you spread that 60-40 as well.
Well, thank you very much, and that's always the plan. And the school district has always had a very good working relationship with the Fair Oaks, as well as Vernon, as well as Kendall County. I talk to Chief Mooring all the time. Tim and I go back several years. So we have a very good relationship of working together to make sure things stay fair.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I have some. The SRO training, is that being picked up on the school district side or on our side?
So we haven't quite crossed that bridge, but it's likely that it's going to come out of our budget to get the SROs certified, because that's the way we've done it with the other law enforcement.
I know it's an expensive program.
It is. It is.
So-
And they're
And
different.
it's one of those hidden costs. I
Correct.
really would like to know about that up front.
Yeah, and there are different levels of the SRO certification, your basic and your advanced. I think there's a couple of in-betweens. Fortunately, it's, well, let me retract what I was about to say. It didn't used to be required, but now with the new changes, certification is now required.
Just keep that in mind.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead, Chesley.
Just a quick question. Who is going to be in charge of communicating, I guess, the role of the SRO to the parents at the school? And I guess in charge of communicating this entire program. I think there might be confusion in what an SRO actually is, and maybe differing views. And I just think we need to communicate that out, and wanted to know who would do that.
Well, historically, and I'll leave that decision ultimately up to the chief and y'all, but historically, our communications director works with the city and the county communication directors to make sure that all the information is the same across the board as we push it out. We want to make sure that there is no conflict. We want everybody to be informed with the same information. So it'll be a joint effort.
Just add a little bit more. I've been working really hard the past 2 weeks of staving off our principals from announcing anything without council approving this MOU, just to make sure that our council was on board and our residents were on board. But they individually, from their school standpoints, are eager to communicate that out to the parents and teachers and staff. I think the school board just had a news story last night or night before. Or the school district, excuse me. They have some communications also. We've been working with Joanna and Casey, our communications team, to put all this information out also. But pending council approval, of course. So.
Jill?
I had a couple of questions actually that came in from some of the parents, and I don't know if y'all can answer me, and if you can't, if you could tell me who could answer it, but they were wanting to know, because it mentioned in here they would be doing some programming and education with the students, and since these are elementary schools, the parents were asking what types of things would be included in that, and maybe you don't know that yet.
To backtrack, just to caveat that with some of her questions, the SROs still are employees of the city. They report to Lieutenant Ojeda bypass the patrol sergeants, go straight to him. All the education programs would be coordinated through, more than likely, the principals and the staff at the school, being vetted by Hector and his staff at the admin office, and then routed through us also.
Okay.
So multiple checkpoints there to make sure that that training is appropriate.
And then the final question I had, do y'all already have the officers identified that are going to do this?
Yes, we've already went through that process, pending that approval. They've already been in contact with the schools, contact with Hector. We've kind of expedited that whole process with the anticipation
Full
of
starting.
approval, but fully knowing that if it's not approved by council, they go right back to patrol.
And then my final question, are they going to be in full uniform? I noticed it said they will have access to a squad car. Are they going to be in full uniform? at
They will
both?
have a marked patrol unit at the school on a daily basis, and they will be in full visible uniform, yes.
Okay.
Right now, we have no plans to change our uniform, what you see me wearing. They do have some proposals, a little bit more comfort with like the shorts or the polo shirt, but still the full rig and body armor, everything, so.
Okay.
If you've seen the Bernie PD and the Kendall County Sheriff's Departments, they have like their soft uniforms or like bike uniforms. They're still very professional, but you're right, they offer a little bit more comfort. And they're a little bit less intimidating also, especially for the younger ones.
That's why I was asking, because I've had a parent bring that up to me, especially with the really little ones.
Yeah, and we had that discussion with the principals during the selection process on what they wanted in their school, because they know their kids, they know their teachers, and they were okay with the uniform for now, but we are saying another meeting to kind of come back and look at that, especially after the first couple weeks of school. So,
I was just going to,
Go
I was
ahead.
just going to kind of piggyback, I think, off of that, which was where I was going with the communication. Thinking it forward, my question was, I think parents may have a different idea of what the role of that officer is. So I think we need to be clear to communicate. They're not 100% of the time stuck outside a door, blocking the door. They're participating in the school. They're doing all these other things, like you said. So when we communicate that out, I think it's really important that we make people aware of exactly what it is they do, you know, what's safe to share.
yes, ma'am.
Anybody else?
I have a
Laura?
second
Mhm.
question. Roy, did you have anything before? I didn't
No.
want to go if you didn't ask anything yet. Oh, you did already? Okay.
If-
Okay. Kind of following up with what Councilmember Manchow was saying about communications, I really don't want to slow down this process because this contract has obviously been approved by every other governing body and we're the last one. And but I really think when we revise this or look at this again, we absolutely need to add a section on communications. So you do talk about who has ownership of an emergency situation, like who is the command of a situation when there's an emergency, but you don't talk about who's responsible for communicating that emergency, who sends out the alert, which entities, who's in charge of that communication. Does the city send it out first? Does the ISD? Do they collaborate? Who talks to the press? Who is responsible? And it's not in here. And while you may have talked it through, I hope, it's not in this, and I think it should be. Good point.
Understandably, where you're coming from, probably not going to be that detailed. We don't want to give away everything that we respond to or the way we respond in an emergency situation.
Absolutely.
And our lines of communications need to remain open, so we probably won't give away everything there. But in an emergency situation, yes, the ultimate command will lay with the police department. But we work very closely with the ISD in those protocols, so.
Right, and I'm not concerned about the command of the police situation. I'm more concerned about command of the communication to the public and to the media, which is not talked about in the contract.
It's certain, if I may, it's certainly something that we can, tell you about the microphone, you don't want me up here. It's certainly something that we can add to future contracts. Obviously, there's no problem with that at all. As we enter into the partnership, we'll find that our communications director from the ISD is going to work very closely with y'all, just like they do with the Sheriff's Department and the Bernie PD, or the City of Bernie. So we're always very careful not to send out conflicting messages. I think early on, we had a couple of instances where that happened, and we certainly don't want that to ever happen again, so we'll work very hard at that.
Yeah, and so kind of in lieu of doing that, obviously. Next time you do review the contract, I do ask that you put that in there, but in lieu of that, I ask that you have a communication policy that's approved and reviewed by all of the entities. It doesn't have to be at the council level, but at least at the staff level right away, just so that everybody understands like what our communications director, what our city manager, what our mayor, everybody says, and who behind the scenes. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, you make some great points, and we'll definitely do that. Yes, ma'am.
Roy?
Yeah, and I think that is a really good point, and I guess just as an interim suggestion, or it could be a question, you know, I believe Brian Benway is your communications director. You're referring to that, you know, we could likewise use our communications resources to help our PD make sure that that public-facing part of the communications plan, that everybody hears on the same page, because when that stuff, just, you know, our recent experiences, winter storms and everything like that, that we have clearly defined channels and everybody knows who's, you know, talking to who, and where the single point of truth is supposed to come from in those kind of situations. I agree with Councilwoman Kerner. You know, we don't want to hold the process up to get this stood up, but I would encourage y'all to start working on that piece, because when you need it right away. So I think it's a really good point to raise. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Chief, I had one quick question.
Yes, sir.
In the interlocal agreement, it kind of touches what Laura was talking about. Excuse me, chain of command and reporting requirements for our officers serving at the school. And going through it, are you comfortable with how it's all laid out? And does it provide a very distinct, the right language so that our officers know where their reporting requirements and what their chain of command is?
I believe so. It's a long document, a lot of legal terms in there, but I believe so. Ms. Merrill has also worked with us on the job description for the SRO, and they report directly to Lieutenant Ojeda. We've communicated that through Hector and Dr. Price, so I believe it's very, very clear. So,
And you're comfortable with the language that's in there?
yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions from anybody here tonight?
One remaining question. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
go ahead.
Are there any police-to-police communication concerns? You guys are all on the right networks. We don't have any radio things that we need to do, any technology that we need to do to ensure that all of the officers, whether they're part of the Bernie Police Department, Kendall County Sheriffs, or you, can all speak on the correct channels in a time of emergency, and we
So
don't need any extra technology.
That's one of the added benefits of being partners with the city of Bernie, Kendall County, that we have for as long as we have.
I know
We're all on
everybody-
the same
yeah.
radio channels. We
Yeah.
all use the same emergency broadcast channels, radio communications. They've already set up the communications between the SROs with the regular trainings and meetings. So that intelligence sharing back and forth, I don't believe there'll be any issues in communications. We haven't found any radio dead spots in either one of our schools yet. They have found some button communication issues, which they've rectified over the past couple of days, because I keep hearing the tests over the radio. But I don't believe there's going to be any communication issues whatsoever.
And the ISD, here's the microphone, and the ISD also has a select group of radios with a select group of PD channels, so we can all communicate in an emergency. And if for some reason there is a back channel that needs to be used, dispatch can patch us in together, so we're all communicated on the same channel. So those things are already in place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And those patches are along with some updates recently that we did, and then we also have some encrypted channels that can't be broadcast on scan networks. So we do have those capabilities.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Then could I get a motion to approve the authorization for the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement between the Bernie Independent School District and the City of Fair Oaks Ranch for the School Resource Officer Program?
So moved.
Second.
From Michelle and Scott. Any other comments or discussion from council?
Thank y'all for putting this together so fast.
And with that, then we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
That completes all the consideration and discussion items that we had on tonight's agenda. With that, we'll move on to reports from staff and committees. And first up is Scott Huzagay to talk to us about the submission of the calculated FY 2022-2023 property tax rates to the City Council.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Scott Husengay, Assistant City Manager, and unfortunately, I do not have an update for you tonight regarding tax rates as submitted or as calculated, because at this time we have not received the final calculations from 2 of the 3 counties in which we are in. Kendall County and Kamal are still working through some issues related to both number of appeals and some calculation errors that they're working through now. We expect to get at least estimates soon to bring back to you for the next meeting. As you may recall from some of our prior discussions, the council would be required to establish a public hearing by, at this point, August 18th, our next meeting, to set the public hearing for the property tax rate in September. At this time, we're not expecting to establish a special meeting in that regard, but we have not ruled that out. We're on the phone with the counties daily as far as when we can expect numbers, when we can provide that. As your information packet says, we're required to post the calculation rates by August 7th or as soon as practicable. As soon as practicable, we will do that, and we'll keep you posted as to when we can expect those. But at this time, we will hurry up and wait, but we'll keep you posted as we learn more. So at this point, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
Any questions for Scott? Scott, I was guessing if we were to get the information between now and the next council meeting, that will keep us on track with our current schedule?
Yes, that is certainly the intent. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten any firm timelines, particularly from Kendall County. We believe that Kamal is close. They're just working through some recalculations right now. We expect to get their numbers soon. At the point we can at least get estimates, Bexar County, which provides our combined role, has agreed to do an estimate for us, even if the numbers aren't certified at that point. So as soon as we get that, we will certainly pass that along, post it when we have the final certification. But yeah, at this point, as we learn more, you will learn more.
All right, thank you. Any questions from anybody else here tonight? Thank you, Scott. Next, we'll talk about the emergency mass communication system update, and Joanna Merrill will give us an update on it.
Thank you, Mayor. All right. So tonight we are coming to talk to you about our mass communication systems. As council is aware, we have had some emergency situations, from the recent fire to the previous winter storm incidents that we've had over the few years. And we've run into a couple of logistical errors with the software and with the current vendor that we're using. So based off of some comments that we received from council, that you are receiving from the community, we decided to take a look at our mass communication system and see what other options might be out there for us. So kind of to start off, what we wanted to bring to you was, what does a mass communication or notification system actually do? So there is a definition up here. I won't read it to you, but the kind of breakdown for it is that the primary function for it is to quickly alert our residents of information regarding threats or whatever it is that we might need to communicate out. And so what we've looked at, our current system is code red, as you are aware. We did vet a few different systems, and at the recommendation of the police department, our IT department, and our communications department, through looking at those different vendors and platforms, this team has come up with a recommendation. Actually, it's not a recommendation. We've already kind of done it, so this is just an update. That to go with Regroup as our new mass communications notification system. And so this slide kind of just talks about some of the differences between the two systems, some of the issues that we had with Code Red. It is not a very user-friendly platform. We did have residents, reach out and let us know that they had trouble getting signed up, or it was difficult to pin their exact location. We even had some technical issues from a GIS standpoint to get maps appropriated correctly through Code Red. Their mobile app, they do have one. One of the limitations is it is only for subscribers in that area. It translates only in one language, broadcasts messages, kind of the same, but there's some extras that we get with Regroup. And then, of course, the annual cost. But as you look to the other column, Regroup is actually a platform that one of our sister cities also uses as well, Bernie, which is the recommendation where we got that recommendation to take a look at this one. But it is very user-friendly, both from a residential standpoint in trying to sign up for it, but also from an administrative end for us to be able to create those notifications quickly, efficiently, and to push them out with very, very little hard work, I would say, to navigate the system. Their mobile app is a little bit more robust than what Code Red currently offers, and we have the ability to create administrative groups along with having the residential groups to be able to utilize it as well. So it helps us not only communicate with the city, but also within our own teams to ensure that, if we have a tree down in the middle of a tornado, that we can communicate with our maintenance team to come out and get them deployed. So some other highlights for Regroup is that it translates in, I believe it's over 60 different languages. So depending on the diversity in our community, they could select the language that is most appropriate or most relatable to them. There's the ability to create unlimited groups with that, which is more of an administrative function on our end, so that we can create different specific channels for the different types of communications, not just emergency, but we may be able to use this on a mass system to utilize, hey, we're having fireworks, we're not having fireworks, we're, whatever it is that we're doing at the time. This also does provide some of the same items as Code Red. There is a geo-targeting option or function for this platform, which is how we can target specific communities. That was one of the problems that we had with Code Red in some of the GIS, the shape files that identified those neighborhoods. With Regroup, we're going to be able to fix some of those issues that we had previously. And one thing that they actually offer that Code Red does not is now something called geofencing. So geofencing could be, it literally is what it sounds like. You put an imaginary fence around an area, and if you have the mobile device or the mobile app and you walk into that area, it's going to ping you. It's going to send you a push notification and say, hey, there's this item going on in this specific area, in case you're aware. So if there is construction, they're doing street maintenance, and it's in this area and we've geofenced it, you have the mobile app. When you go down that street, you're going to know when you walk into that, or when you drive into that area, that there's something going on in that area. So that's one of the ways that we can utilize that. We're hoping that helps our public works team to be able to communicate that. And just another option in kind of what we've gone through. As far as automated alerts, it offers more, and it is part of more national organization systems than Code Red currently is. And our favorite part is the annual cost is lower than previously. So we always like to save money where we can, especially when we can get more services included in that. Some of the enhanced features, not just the differences, is definitely a big plus is the mobile app. It does provide the option for two-way messaging. That is not something that we currently have the bandwidth to potentially implement at this time, but as we grow and have somebody that could man a two-way platform, it is an option. for us to use. It does do push notifications as well. I think I already talked about the geofencing and the geo-targeting, but the key for this one, especially with our community, and the difficulty that not only the staff had in creating code red messages and ensuring that it functioned properly, was the ease of use that this system that will provide us. Before I skip on, so Regroup, one of the highlights for it is ranked #1 in the market for top emergency response communication systems, and I mean, you can't get better than #1, right? So. Now, some implementation to kind of talk about that. We are looking to implement this fairly quickly. There is going to be some overlap between Code Red and Regroup because we want to ensure that we don't lose anybody in the transition. So we, as a communications team, have already begun talking about what is that going to look like potentially. We don't have a firm date for a go live. We are estimating that I believe they notified us on our last meeting that it would take about a week to get the system functional for us to start doing testing and things like that. But from a communication standpoint, what we're looking at is several different options. Some of them ideas brought to us from council. So in-person registration booths, that was something that council had mentioned at one meeting in the last couple of months that that you would like to see or that you would even be willing to help with. So we do have that in an option in there. We are definitely able to man that, but you know, the more volunteers, the better to help our community. For those who are not as tech savvy, come to us. We'll help you get it set up and go from there. We are looking into creating a video to put online so that you can watch it and show the residents, hey, this is step-by-step how you get signed up. Exactly. Education awareness campaign, obviously we are going to do that via our social media platforms. We are also going to utilize Code Red to help us put the message out that we're switching, which, you know, is funny, but it really is worth it because the customers that are currently using Code Red, they may not be getting their information from anywhere else. So we want to make sure that we notify them via the platform they've already signed up for and that they already know, to ensure that if they want to continue receiving those messages, that they need to go to the Regroup system. So we will be utilizing that one. We've also talked with our utility department about possibly creating some inserts for the bills. Obviously, we recognize that not everybody gets those bills, but for those that do, it's just an enhanced way for us to get the message out. Obviously, we would definitely partner with homeowners associations hoping that they can share the messages that we put out. And we've also been in contact with BISD as well. Our partnership, as they were discussing earlier regarding the Sro program, is very strong. And so we have already begun those conversations to let them know as well.
Joanna,
Yes, sir?
has anybody looked into the possibility of whether there's a way to migrate the Code Red subscriber data out and at least use it initially to send out a notification to resubscribe? And
We did. That was the first thing that we looked at. We were hopeful that we would be able to export that data from Code Red and just import those users into the system, but unfortunately the contract that was originally signed with Code Red does not allow it. So we cannot make that conversion easier.
That was actually my question, but to follow up on that, are you asking them to pay for that service to be able to export that?
yeah, pay for a file.
Pay for an export of the geolocation and the phone number?
I'll have to ask our procurement department because they're helping us with the termination of the Code Red contract. So it's definitely something we can look into.
Yeah, it's a good question because I've seen that before. We just said, we'll pay you to produce a file for us that we can import into the new app.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that. That's a great idea. All right. So to kind of continue with our communications information, we have put together a very tentative timeline, just so council kind of knows what we're thinking. When we do set that go live date, this is what we're kind of looking at in the first few weeks, the first quarter, and then we will continue to do quarterly or even every other month updates to remind the community, hey, go sign up for this, be a part of this. If you want to get this information, here's how you do it. And then we have a few examples of some communication graphics that we are already planning to get put up once we get ready to make those official pushes, just because everybody likes to see examples. And if there are any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer. We do. It really was night and day.
So it's easier to use,
Yes,
provides more capability, and it's cheaper.
exactly. Win, win, win.
What's the drawback?
I don't know yet, but we are going to test it before we let it go live to make sure that we find as many of those potentials as we can. But so far, right now, we haven't seen any downside to making the switch.
And talking with Bernie, I mean, were they able to provide, maybe in their transition or whenever they stood it up, provide us some help and maybe things we ought to look at ahead of time?
I believe so. I believe Brian, the IT manager, has been in close contact. I believe that's where this referral actually initiated, was from their information technology department notifying ours. And so from my understanding, a lot of those logistics have already been discussed, the good, the bad, the ugly, and really what we've come out with is mostly positive. And right now we haven't really seen any negative to this, other than there is going to be some pain in the transition and making sure that we get people to utilize the new platform. And that's just why we have such a robust communications plan already outlined.
Roy?
Yeah, just to understand, you mentioned we had some technological hurdles about or maybe they were resource hurdles on the two-way or channel. And the reason I'm raising that is I'd be interested in knowing what the capabilities potentially are, because we have a couple of other processes in place for, I think, everything from, turning in trouble tickets on, water utilities kind of stuff. And then, also I think we established a system where people could report if they had a code compliance question, they could submit, I'll call it a complaint. But, if there's an opportunity to use something like this that's integrated in one platform rather than having all these disparate pieces that people are managing, I'm not saying get on it right now, but we might want to look at and see if this has some capabilities there that we might want to explore.
And it does have those capabilities. We have looked at them. Of course, right now we do already have those other set processes in place. One thing that we want to be wary of is just making sure we're not making too many changes all at once.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to ensure that we start here, get our foothold, get this up and going, ensuring that we can get the community to buy into the new system. And get signed up for it. And once we get bandwidth and we get this established, we will definitely continue to look at incorporating those other programs as we're able. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from anybody here tonight? Thanks, Joanna. That was a great layout, and I appreciate your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Council.
Next, we'll move on to our last item on reports from staff, which is the FY 2022-2023 department budget presentation focused on the administrative services of the city. I'll turn it over to Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just kick it off and turn it over, but I'm happy to kick off, I guess, the first of our department budget presentations. This is, I think, the first time we've done it in this format, so I'm personally excited. I'm not sure about the folks who are going to come behind me, but I think they're well prepared. I think it's a good opportunity for the council to relate some of the budget numbers into the operations, where we have been and where we're going, with some of the key metrics as it relates to the budget. You'll hear 5 tonight that are loosely in the administrative services grouping, and I will come back at the end with a very brief budget update. And next time you'll hear from Public Works and the Police Department on our August 18th meeting. But for now, I'll turn it over to our department heads, and I think Municipal Court is going to kick us off.
Mayor, I have one just administrative question before we get started. So this is in the presentation section of the agenda. So no one is looking for any guidance in this time. They're just looking to tell us what they put into their first draft of the budget that we haven't gotten yet, or is there a draft that we've seen that this is in? I just want to understand, are we just here to listen and ask questions to understand and provide guidance at a different time, or just?
My understanding was just the presentation.
Okay.
And there'll be a determination later on, but
And all of the figures that you'll see are reflective of the most recent update that the council has.
So the last time you presented, that first draft budget you presented to us at the last council meeting, or whenever that was, I can't remember now. The details behind those numbers is what's being presented to us.
Yep. With some modest modifications that you received this week, but
Yes.
and we'll go through those changes as well. But it is as of this Tuesday, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
and this really covers the maintenance and operations portion of the budget as it relates to each of the sections that we'll hear from.
That's correct.
Okay?
And we'll start with Municipal Court, and I believe Ricardo's going to go first. So thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Ricardo Bautista. I'm the court administrator here for your all's fine city. And of course, Honorable Judge Kim Keller will be presenting with me future. The mission of the municipal court is to provide an effective and impartial administration of justice as prescribed by our Texas Code of Criminal Procedure and of Code of Judicial Conduct, with exceptional customer service to build trust and confidence with the public and our citizens. The municipal court really is broken down into 4 core services: administration, judicial proceedings, our presiding judge, and our prosecution, which is our city prosecutor. Our administration really oversights all programs, including establishing departmental goals and objectives and controls, judicial administration, and processing all our Class C misdemeanors filed by our police department and some by our city prosecutor, as prescribed again by the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure and Code of Judicial Conduct. As judicial processing, what we really handle is responsible managing all our dockets, making sure that we keep them scheduled and steady, including arraignments, show cause trials. Also, as that falls under our judicial processing is our customer service and collections. Of course, as you are aware, our presiding judge is Honorable Judge Keller, and prosecution is our city prosecutor, Cynthia Trevino. On our next slide here, our recent accomplishments, the court has come up to date as far as anything that we've had pending due to the pandemic. We've really been able to do that just, limited with our court staff and just trying to do the best as teamwork to make sure that we caught up on everything. We resumed in-court proceedings. We believe in having more contact in person with our citizens and public, making sure that they're aware that the judicial system is here. We initiated a paperless process in our court to try to eliminate cost and effectiveness throughout the court. We started also live streaming our court proceedings. We just recently started, probably about 2 months ago, but it's to help with transparency and make sure that everybody has an eye on us as well. On our next slide here, on our performance measures, our first subject here is our cases filed. As you can see, we can see that we kind of dropped a little bit, but now we're projecting to increase our number of cases filed. Cases in collection has also increased, which just means it follows along with the cases that are filed. As more cases are filed, more people tend to be landing in collections. And that reflects also on our amounts pending in collections. Defendants appearing before the judge has also increased, like I said, slightly. Our hours of staff training, we usually try to make sure that we maintain our training yearly. We try to make sure that we're training on our software as well as our judicial knowledge. As you can see on the bottom one as well, our magistrative services, our judge has gone a little bit more than usual to magistrate people, as her duty tends to come up every once a month at least now. But as you can see, the following slide, I see it as a more visual aspect of how our cases filed has increased. As like I said, it goes hand in hand with as more cases go to collection. In the following slide, the proposed fiscal year 2022-2023 budget is $230,644. Most of it is taken up by our personnel by 64%, and then our professional services is 34%. Minimum of 2% for supplies and maintenance and operations. Changes in the budget, as you can probably see, we've gone down a little bit as far as our operation. Very slight, but we have decreased our budget in this coming fiscal year. And municipal court revenue has increased, though. As you can see, we've slowly but surely keep growing as a court and as a city, so these numbers tend to go up. And these are our restricted funds. These funds have to do with court technology, court security building, court efficiency, court truancy prevention fund, and court jury fund. All these are automatically restricted by law that we can only be used for that specific use. And like I said, the trend tends to be an increase on each one of those as our cases filed has gone up. And now I will be turning it over to Judge Keller, as she will be discussing a little bit of our court security evaluation that we had. If she wants to come up.
Yeah, and real quick, Mayor and Council, while Judge Keller's making our way to the podium, as we work through these, going back to your question, if there's directives or anything that you want to give us, absolutely, we're here to hear those. You're not here just for a listening session. We're wanting your feedback. If you have any to give, right? You're obviously allowed to do that, so.
Understand. It's not in the discussion section of the agenda, so that's my comment. So.
All right, good evening. I wanted to bring up this slide because I'm going to be talking today about the Court Security Building Fund. We have to have, the Texas legislature has established a requirement. Every single ticket that we collect, we're required to collect a little bit of money for the technology fund, a little bit of money for the security fund, a little bit of money for court efficiency. And so what you see up there is a very large amount of money that's been collected over many years, and we haven't really taken advantage of that yet. The room that we're in today, this is a very shared room. Now, usually it was a building for police and for court. That's where we do the municipal court. Now it's for council. But one of the things that we had a security expert come in and talk to us about is, what do you think about the security of this as a courtroom? What do you think about the security of the front office when folks walk in every day? Our court staff sits in that lobby. So as you leave today, kind of take a look at it and think about what you think about how it's structured, and are there security risks? And that's what we asked our security consultant to look at. And we have the funds that are in there in a particular court security fund that can only be used for court security. This is not taxpayer dollars. This is a court security fund collected as required by the Texas legislature. And so what we're going to ask council to do in our budget is to approve the use of some of those funds to make court staff a little more secure and to make this room a little more secure. The first thing that we're going to ask council to approve is taking the front office. So that's where the court staff sits every day. That little cubby is where they do their business 5 days a week. One of the recommendations of the court security expert was to take that front window and to raise up how much of it is in glass. Reinforce the wall underneath, but make less of it glass. And that way, it's more secure. The glass that's there should be bulletproof, reinforced glass, but let's reinforce the wall underneath
So that's going to be one of the things we ask to use these funds for. The second thing we're going to ask some of these funds be used for is to wall off this window. You might not have noticed it, but when you walk around, there's a separate window right here that really serves no purpose. In fact, we have a printer sitting in front of it. Nobody uses the window. It doesn't have an opening or a closing. It just, whenever this building was designed, for some reason, they put a window there. Court security consultant, the expert, suggested to definitely wall off that window. There's no reason for it to be there. It's another security risk, so just make it a full wall. So we're going to ask court counsel to approve expenditure of funds for that. The third one is a little bigger, and it's a little more expansive, and it may take phases if council agrees to it. But it's to focus on the security of this area. This is called a court dais. The judge sits here, the witness sits there, the clerk sits there. If we need a court coordinator, he sits back there too. This is a very important area for security purposes when you look at the statistics of incidences that happen in a courtroom. This is the area that is the least secure. We always have a bailiff here. Chief and our officers do an amazing job of securing us when we're here. But we do business in this room sometimes when we don't have a bailiff, and we need to make sure this area is very secure. One of the first comments by the courtroom security consultant was there should be a separate entrance and exit to the court dais for court staff and the judge. As it stands right now, when I come in to do court, I either come through the back of the police building, which I shouldn't be doing technically. I'm supposed to be completely objective and biased and not intermingling with our witnesses, sometimes police officers. So I come in through the back, I walk through the back where the witnesses are already sitting, where the members of the public are sitting, and I walk through the back area. Same with our witnesses, same with our defendants, same with our lawyers that come into court. That's not what should be happening. In a courtroom, there should be an entrance along the back for where court staff and the judge enters separately and independently, and where court staff and the judge can exit separately and independently. There's a door right here. I'm going to walk a little bit. The courtroom security officer came in and said,
Judge, if you don't mind, you can kind of show us and then come back and...
right here, all the way out to the outside of the building. I didn't even notice. I've been working in this room for 4 years now. I didn't even notice. That's a door to the outside of the building. He suggested, why not try to figure out a way to use that as your separate entrance and exit? The problem is, right now, it's open to the public. And so the recommendation was to fence off this part of this parking lot. It's kind of hard to configure in your mind right now. I wish I would have brought a picture. I think you guys were provided the examples that were drawn up by the court security expert. If you were provided those, what I'm talking about today is example 3. I don't know if that was in your packet. Okay, I'll make sure you get it. We had a very basic level written report given to us, and we were provided, I think either Chief got it or Ricardo got it, a blueprint of the building, but it shows his recommendations that are written up in it. But one of the ideas is to take this back part of the building, fence in this initial area, which has only a few parking lots, make it a separate gated parking lot for court staff. If there's a security risk for a particular witness, if there's a security risk for maybe a domestic violence situation, which we have sometimes, that person would be allowed to park over here in an enclosed parking area and then be allowed to enter through the private entrance. That's going to take some money. The other idea, while we're at it, while we're thinking about it, and since we haven't really taken advantage of these funds, is to use the outside area that is still available and isn't being used and build in a court conference room. We were supposed to have a jury trial this week. Yesterday, we were supposed to have one. We sent out jury summonses. Our citizens are excited to come. We basically had no one try to get out of jury service in this city. Everybody was excited to show up and do their part. Our jurors need a place to put their belongings. They need a place to deliberate. As it stands right now, we would be using this public conference room if we had to. right outside of here. We all share that conference room right now. Police department, now, city staff shares it. We share it. Our prosecutor uses it on periodically. We technically, when you look at the separation of powers doctrine in our Constitution, the judiciary is a separate branch of government, should be separate and independent. And so I'm going to very, very much recommend to the court, to council, to let's create a separate conference room out here while we're doing the renovation, if we do it. And that would become a jury deliberation room. It would become a court staff conference room. It could be a place for preparation for trials. It could be used solely and exclusively by court staff. Because as it stands right now, that little area is the only area that court staff has to use and to prepare. And so I know I'm bringing a lot of ideas out. First and foremost, I would like approval, when you consider the budget, to deal with the window issue. But I'd like to put it out there that we start moving on making this a more secure area. And we have the money, as stated earlier. It's not taxpayer funds. It's required to be collected by Austin, and we can only use it for court security. And so I'm going to ask council to start putting a plan together with phases to make this area more secure. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? Go ahead.
Is our mic on?
We started to plan for using some of the funds, and then COVID hit, and we basically shut down, and we were doing court through Zoom. And so it was almost a waste of money at that point to focus on what's the most secure. Since we've gotten geared back up and running with in-person proceedings, and we got our security expert to come in, now we have the information that we need to make some changes if council will allow us.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I do, Councilwoman. The statute on the books is in the Code of Criminal Procedure. I am the chairwoman of the Court Security Committee. We're required to have one under law. We're required to have certain individuals be a participant on the committee. Councilwoman Stroop is on our committee. We are then required to make recommendations of how to use these funds, and then we do have to seek permission of council to expend those funds. Emily,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
So how do you receive that approval? Is it approval within the budget, or is there a separate resolution or ordinance? How does that approval come to you?
What we've done in the past is we've put our court security asks within the budget, and then council will approve a certain amount, and then we work with that amount. Over the past few years, we've done an ask much smaller than what I'm talking about now, and we really haven't used, you might notice on some of the paperwork, I went through the packet that y'all were given today, a lot of numbers. I run away from numbers, that's why I went to law school, but a lot of numbers. You'll notice that the court security fund is not being, we haven't been using what we were budgeted to use because we just haven't, we've been putting it off. But I do believe it goes into the budget. Maybe somebody on city staff can answer that question, if it should go into your general budget, or is it a separate motion?
Judge Keller is correct. And for example, in the fiscal year 22 budget, the current year, there's $4,500 that was set aside from the court security fund for some tables, a panic button, and something I'm forgetting, but it's a $4,500 budget that the council, excuse me, included in the current year. So if we want, so any of these items, at least up to the level of that fund, could be included in the adopted budget. You can do it later as well, but typically you have done it as part of the adopted budget.
Follow-on question. Why isn't it in the budget now? Like, I mean, the one that you're showing me, the draft budget, why didn't you just put it in the draft budget?
We actually don't even have the data. What I wanted to do is take the temperature of council and see, is this something you're going to be willing to let us do? And if you are, I need to collect some data from a build-out, the fencing. I'll collect that data, I'll get it to council. I don't even have a rough estimate of it. I think I talked to Tobin, we're probably going to have an engineer kind of look at this idea that we're talking about. And then, but if council is open to this, I'm willing to go forward and start collecting the data that we need. I don't think it has to be done as a part of this official budget because it's a separate, independent fund that can only be used for this. So I think we could even do it later on down the line as we collect the data.
Neil, you just answered my question. So we can move forward with approving the budget as it is now, and then you can come back afterwards and say, okay, let's amend the budget and add this in there.
That's correct.
Or, okay. Thank you.
Roy?
Yeah, and this is kind of a related comment because I see it as an evolving thing, and quite honestly, at the pace of government, it might not be until next year's budget before we act.
Could be.
But it sounds like the opportunity here is to look at the feasibility, at the best options for, you know, incorporating these improvements, and it seems like it needs to be integrated into the, I'm going to call it the master's facility plan. I hope I'm not just making that up here, a new thing for us to manage. But, you know, there's things that are going on with this building, things that are going on with the campus, and it sounds like these changes need to be incorporated into that capital improvement plan for the city campus. But, you know, the best solutions can be identified and worked. And you know, it's probably a multi-year plan, and so that there almost needs to be that kind of a strategic approach to getting to where you want to be.
Yep, will do. Was there a question,
I
Scott?
think Scott had.
For that, for sure not, right. Yeah, everything that we've asked for before, staff took care of it. They did it. They built this entire, it's beautiful. I mean, they're doing great work, so. Okay.
So my question is, and I just thought of this today, but is there any reason why we can't just approve $58,724? So we only have to do this once instead of doing 4,500, 5,000?
You absolutely can. The gap in information right now is, these are our ideas, right? So we need to vet them. To add a conference room is, we're gonna have to hire some professional services, architects, engineers to design these things. That $58,000 is not even gonna cover those services, right? So we're talking about some ideas that are gonna need more funding than what's in this, but
Sure.
we need a starting point, and I think that's what the judge is trying to frame up. Do we have some permission to start spending some of this money to vet these ideas?
Right. No, I understand that if we want to do everything that we've been talking about, it's going to cost a heck of a lot more than $58,724. But if we say, hey, Judge Keller, you've got $58,724, do what you can do with it.
You bet.
Start with whatever you feel is most important or most imminent and go for it. And then once you're tapped out from that, then we'll see where we are and where we need to go from there.
Yes, you can absolutely do that.
You know, I'm just going to throw out there, it seems like, and just from my own personal history that I won't elaborate on now, it seems like an immediate pain point is, can we improve the safety of the individuals working out here in the vestibule? And to just offering that might be the, I hate this term, low-hanging fruit that we could maybe do something about.
But I agree with you.
Yes.
The day-to-day, every day, it's the staffers sitting in there. That's the immediate every single day. That's my biggest concern. This needs to happen, but I would love for that to happen as soon as possible.
Well, so back to Councilman Parker's point, there might be some opportunity within this budget cycle to see if we can get some of that going.
Yep.
And I will make sure that I get to everyone the report and the examples, which do talk about the walling in of the window, the raising of the window, and then the idea over here. Another idea that the consultant had that I learned very quickly from staff that was not a good idea for us was the thought of moving this to that side, because you do have a door there. And I think Brian's eyes almost popped out when I thought about moving all of the I mean, there is so much
Too many
technology right
wires.
there, so much. And so there've been ideas vetted, and we've thought about them, and I really think this is probably the most efficient use of funds. So,
Yeah, it's
okay, any further questions?
It's interesting challenges. If you go back and look, it was before all of our time, the original design for this building, the lobby for the court and the lobby for the police department were going to be the same, right? And somewhere along the process, it got flipped. And so court had their own lobby, but this space out here was supposed to be for the conference room, jury rooms, and all that. And for whatever reason, now we have two different lobbies. And so we're in a position of not providing appropriate security. So we're trying to retroactively fix the problem here.
And we're looking into possibly having court more often, only because we've started magistrating individuals more often, which means we could be bringing folks in on the regular that have a warrant. And so beefing up our security is a good thing to do now before we start these additional duties. So, well, any further questions?
Yeah, just for me, so there's $58,000 in the fund right now. And you talked about phasing it, and this area out here would probably be phase one.
Yes.
But we haven't done any engineering or know the cost on what it's going to take.
No data.
And really, I guess maybe if, I'm not sure that we can get it all done within this budget approval process.
I think what I was kind of envisioning in my mind was thinking about phases, phase one, and then maybe the fencing as phase two, which I think would be the least cumbersome and the least difficult and the least expensive, and then talk about actual structural changes.
Yeah,
Phase
so
three.
just focusing on phase one. We've done no engineering design. We don't have the information to really budget it at this time.
On phase two or three, no. But I don't think we need engineering for this. This is closing in a window. I don't think we have to hire an engineer to figure out how to do that. I really don't. I mean, unless staff wants to tell me otherwise, we're talking about closing in a window. So, and we had a courtroom security expert in here talking about it. It's an interior wall. It's not a load-bearing wall. We're just closing up a window. So.
Okay. And I thought you mentioned bulletproof glass, reinforcing.
We're going to talk about that and see if we do reinforce the bottom. That provides a safe zone.
The point I was really trying to get to is, I mean, would that be encompassed in the 58,000? Would that cover it? Because right now we're really talking about the budget process.
Right.
And I think what's coming up is would it be beyond the 58,000? So as we go through budget now, are you really asking for more than 50, more funds that would include beyond the 58,000?
Not for phase one.
Not for phase one.
But possibly phase two and three, yes. But that would be, I would wait until next year's council if we did have to go above and beyond, and then I would come and ask for money from council for that.
And then really the follow-on question to that is if it came out, this really isn't a part of the budget process then, the 58,000, and I guess.
Right.
Because if, say we do have to go out and get bids, all of this, it doesn't come back until October, that 58,000 is available for court security, and you could access that money at any time.
That's correct.
Okay.
Is that true? And that maybe is back to Laura's question that we could just by resolution rather than it having to be approved as part of the budget.
Right. So that wasn't the point I was making. I just wanted to know where we would put the money, but to follow on to your point, we don't require an entire bid and budget, entire bid and engineering design before we budget something. we budget, we're basically saying, we're giving you the ability to spend up to 58,000, come back with your project, just like everyone else does.
Right.
And tell us how you want to spend it, and if it costs more than 58,000, then we would have to vote on that at that time.
Yes.
So that's, I'm not concerned about the bids and all that stuff right now. Either we say, we're allowing you to spend up to 58,000, you come back and tell us what projects you're going to do, because this is in our strategic action plan, is to beef up security for municipal court, so it obviously makes sense to fund that. And then you would come back with the project, just like any other project, and say, now that I have this budget, this is how I plan to spend it. It's either within or not, and we decide at that point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and the real point that I was trying to get to, an estimate. So what if, what we're really in the budget process right now, she has 58,000, is she asking for more than 58,000?
I did not hear that. So
So that's the piece we don't know. So that's why I was asking about estimate.
When this starts getting looked at, maybe, but not, it would not happen by the time of this budget cycle being finished. There's
Yeah.
no way.
Okay.
It's not possible.
Anybody else? Any other questions from anybody here tonight? Judge Keller?
Okay, thank you.
I guess just as operational wise, as far as administration goes, I don't know if you guys had any questions for me.
I would ask the question I always ask. You know, is there anything y'all haven't presented that's making it difficult for y'all to accomplish your mission?
No, no. I think we have as much resources that we need right now to make sure that the court remains operational, and that we make sure that we meet every standard that the state has and that the city has as far as us operating efficiently and effectively.
Thanks.
Oh.
We'll move on to HR and communications.
Yes, moving right along. HR followed by finance.
All right, good to see you again, Council. All right, so we are going to start with the Human Resources and Communications Mission Statement. We are committed to attracting, developing, and retaining a diverse workforce capable of providing quality services to the citizens of Fair Oaks Ranch, and to informing, educating, and engaging the citizenry through active city communications. So as we go into this, there are definitely two different distinct departments that I oversee, and one is Human Resources. So I kind of just outlined some of the core services in this model for what we've got, and then communications as well. So you can kind of see Human Resources is talent management, benefits and wellness, training and development, employee recognition, engagement, those types of items, obviously hiring, risk management. Communications, this is new. My team is new for this one, so we are still building this one, but it revolves around media and public relations management, external and internal communications, content creation and development, emergency crisis communications, which I just presented to you a little earlier today, and then of course our website and social media management. From here, Human Resources has a couple of accomplishments that we'd like to highlight that we've been able to complete over the last few months. We have been able to design and implement our core Human Resources Information System module within NeoGov, along with an Insights module. The HRIS system is basically our core data containment profile, and then Insights is where we have started to develop our applicant tracking system, where we can get candidates through in an electronic version. We've also implemented, just within our own department, new employee appreciation events for the employees here at the city, a couple of different morale enhancing programs. As we all know, it has been very tough through COVID and staff shortages, so we have done what we can to lift our team up the best we can. Specifically from a benefits and wellness standpoint, we've negotiated a 0% net increase for our employee health benefits. And what that is in reference to, typically every year we go, I don't want to say out to bid, but we negotiate with our current healthcare providers to ensure that we're getting the best possible rates regarding the premiums that the city pays for the employees as part of our benefit package. And initially, our provider, which is through United Healthcare, came back with a 13% proposed increase. And with working through one of our vendors, we were able to negotiate that to a 0 pass rate for this coming fiscal year. So there will be no increase in the actual premiums that the city is going to be getting charged by UHC. So we are very excited for that. That almost never happens. But we did work really hard to get that taken care of this year. So some other things that we've done is we've successfully transitioned our pre-employment and background check screening processes to a new vendor that is provides a little more enhanced services, at least from an operational standpoint. And then we've also had a successful State of the City event that we planned and coordinated and sold out. So we're very excited about that as well. From our communications side of the department, this one again is a little bit newer, but we have successfully designed and implemented the live streaming of council meetings. And as Ricardo mentioned a little earlier, they have also recently started to live stream their court meetings as well. So my team is also assisting with that. So we're excited to see that up and into fruition. We've created a YouTube channel, not only for the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, but also specifically a separate channel for Municipal Court as they have some different requirements. And we worked hand in hand with our IT department on that, obviously, so I want to make sure to give them credit for that. We've incorporated some new platforms into our social media. Last year, I believe, we incorporated Nextdoor. It wasn't something we utilized a lot. And this year, we've incorporated, with our new multimedia communications officer, Casey, we've been able to incorporate more postings through LinkedIn. We've even, again, are dipping our toes into Twitter as well. So other than that, we are also looking at, through Casey, which is our new communications officer, we've enhanced some of our educational videos. You might have seen us on the ranch in a couple of instances with our golf cart education videos. We hope to continue enhancing those videos and being able to produce those. We've also just recently did, the drought contingency information with our new environmental compliance manager, Kelsey. So we've also internally, from an operational standpoint, we've developed a communications and public engagement procedure to help guide us and understand what that looks like. And again, of course, we've onboarded our new multimedia communications officer. So we are very excited about all the things that we've done in both of these departments. Some performance measures to kind of look at. We do have a mix here full of HR. So the top 3 are human resources related. Bottom 3 are social media related. And with this information, I kind of just want to point out that the communications information, the data on here, previously only measured metrics that we obtained from Facebook. So if you do see like a big jump or a big difference in some of those numbers, that is why. The data for this year does include our newer platforms for Nextdoor, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. So that is why you see a big difference there. Some of these other numbers we've talked about previously from the human resources side, the separations, the new hires, what those numbers look like. We thought it might be interesting for you to see not just the people that are leaving, but the percentage of people that we are retaining, and that's the average annual retention rate we have here. What you see, we are currently projecting if we have 0 more new hires or 0 more separations throughout the rest of the year, we're projecting to be about 87.2% at our retention rate. Best practice, best standard throughout the industry is good. You're doing really well with your retention rate if you're hitting 90%. So we are really close to that. So I consider that a win in our area. At least retaining some of the people that we have. We have had a lot of vacancies, but some of that is because of new positions. And we are still looking to fill several positions in the police department, and those just historically take several months to fill because of the extensive backgrounds and processes that they go through. Other than that, followers for communications, people reached, we are definitely trending those upwards. We hope to continue to grow those from a communication standpoint. But here are just a few metrics that we're looking to hopefully bring to you guys on a more frequent basis.
Joanna, can I ask
Yes,
a
sure.
question? I'm just curious about what strategies you're thinking of to go from the current 60-plus days to fill a vacant position to 30 days.
So the 60-plus vacancy, that I believe is situational. So what we're looking at with that is the challenges that we're facing in the market right now with hiring individuals. The market in general is probably the toughest it's ever been. So the projection where we would like to be is to see an average vacancy of 30 days. So that's always going to be the goal. A lot of that depends on the market and what we are able to get, the candidates that we were looking at. Specifically for the police department, we've already had conversations of some potential programs that we might bring to council in the future to help enhance that recruitment potential. But as of right now, I don't want to say too much because it's it's in its infancy stages.
And that's kind of why I was asking to say, is there's something coming to this meeting soon that'll tell us a little bit about how we're going to get there? Because I think it's critical, because I see, a lot of seats open for a long time, and I think that puts a lot of pressure on the staff that's here.
Yes.
They're all over-allocated and those kinds of things, so I have a lot of interest in that.
100%. So those will come to you once we are able to develop them a little bit more. I know I'm also working with Grant, the Director of Public Works. They've brought a program to our attention that looks fantastic, where we can partner not only with WHEAT, which I'm not going to pretend I know what that acronym stands for, but also with the Texas Workforce Commission. They have a program that are partnering together. So we're in infancy stages in some of these to help alleviate some of these vacancies and issues. But again, the goal is always to be 100% full, but we're doing what we can. Thank you. Budget-wise, my department has 3 current positions, myself as the director. I have an HR and communications specialist, which is Jennifer Hudson, and then recently council had approved for our new position, Casey Parker, as our multimedia communications specialist officer. Sorry, too many specialists. And so what we're looking at right here is the new format that I believe Scott had mentioned to council to show what our budget looks like from an operational standpoint, and then also what that looks like in the overall fund balance. There aren't a lot of changes to the HR budget, but as you can see, there are a few areas that did go up. And so this slide kind of talks about what that is. We did have one area that decreased, obviously supplies, maintenance, and operations. That decrease is mostly related to renovations from City Hall, cost of furniture. So each department had some of that budgeted for us. So that's not going to carry over into the next year. So that is why that decreased. From a professional services standpoint, there were slight increases, and most of that's just due to inflation. There was an increase in the annual dues for some of our professional memberships and subscription costs. There were some additional costs for implementing our new communications FTE, whether that's training or whatnot. And then council did approve recognition of 2 new full recognition weeks for us this year, and that would be recognition for Municipal Court Week and Municipal Clerk Week. So that does have some costs associated with it to ensure that we are recognizing the staff members in those departments as well.
Are your software licenses included in the professional services category?
The software, I believe, is in the shared IT budget.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I had to look at finance to make sure I said that right. Some project highlights. I did mention this as one of our accomplishments. This one is the most visual that council can actually see. This is the Insights module that we have gotten up and going specifically so you can see the new format of our career page and how this looks to our outward-facing candidates. So they can go to our city website, they can click on employment, And it will take them to our new career page where we have our jobs posted. They can also go into, and this is not interactive or else I would show it with you, but you can also go into it and apply directly from each of these postings. It has a detailed job description in there. It notifies people of the salary ranges so that they're aware up front. It also has our benefits listed in there, so it's all nice in one area to make it ease of use for candidates to apply. So we're very excited about this. In 2021 was when we completed the core module. This year we've completed this one. We are testing still in using it actually, and I say testing because every time you get something new, you learn something new as you go. And then we are in the process, we've just begun the early stages of beginning the onboard module, and what that module will do for us is it will take the candidates and the applicants that we have selected to hire from this platform and merge it into our core system so that we do not have to do double work to double data entry and things like that. So it's a streamlining the process from start to finish. It takes them from the beginning all the way through the actual employment process in an electronic system. So we're about 37.5% completed with our modules, and that's just based off of the remaining modules that we have to complete the entire NeoGov package, and that tentatively includes a benefit module so that our employees can enroll in their benefits from an employee self-service platform. We also have a performance module that's incorporated into this, where we can then do our annual performance evaluations on this platform as well, instead of having paper versions to streamline that process. We also will be able to, at some point, incorporate our learning platform, which will give us access to training that NeoGov offers. It will also allow us to have one centralized location for training and certifications. And I could go on, but that's some of the highlights of what that program looks like. Next, we've got our learning, development, and training programs. I just thought it was neat to highlight this one. Annually, we have, in the Human Resources Department, we've incorporated our annual compliance training to ensure that we are doing harassment prevention, and that's kind of standard industry, but we also, in the previous year, did modules for leadership training. We recently actually sent some of our public works team. They agreed to participate in this program for us through TML, through a course that TML offers, and we got some really positive feedback on supervisor and management training as well. So we're always looking at ways to provide professional development resources for our team and to enhance their learning, their knowledge, and to feel like they have the ability to grow. Next, we have the live streaming. So this is also a very big one. Council is aware you were very involved in helping us make it through this process. But we, along with the IT department and even the city secretary department, researched, designed, and implemented this process from the very beginning with council's direction. And we are obviously, to date, happy that it is up, it is live, it is working, and it is 100% complete. Questions?
Any other questions for Joanna?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a point of clarification that I want you to clear it for me.
Sure.
This number on this graph here, the gray line represents 2022, 23. Where does that correspond on your more detailed spreadsheet? Because I don't find any number that matches for that on here.
I will refer to our finance department on that one.
So like what I think it matches up to, it only says 155 on this, and this says like closer to 300 and something. So what am I not looking at correctly?
Right. What you're looking at probably is the general fund portion, and I believe, council member, you were absent the last meeting when we talked to the council about changing our perspectives so that we provide the total budgets to the council inclusive of what is in the general fund and what's in the utility fund as well for these administrative departments. So what you're not seeing is the utility fund portion
Okay.
on that sheet in front of you.
Yeah, if you go back to the circle chart that shows.
Oops. Sorry about that.
I'll probably come meet with you and go.
More.
actually, can you go back to that slide that shows the breakout?
Yes.
So, just as a generic question, this
doesn't
is
show the
actually
amounts,
probably
but that's
more
Percentage, so
for
it's hard, it's
Scott.
confusing.
No, hold on a second.
So there is a breakout of the fund of how much is being paid for by the general fund and the enterprise fund. And I see that there's a different percentage for each department, which is not uncommon in any organization. Curious, how do you determine that breakout? Yeah, I'm used to seeing business allocations done by department, and there's typical processes that I'm just curious, because we hadn't been exposed to this before, and now I'm
Yeah,
interested,
yeah.
so, thank you.
Yeah, the short answer, in most cases, it's 50-50 unless there are particular services that benefit strictly one fund over the other. So like in the case of human resources, there may be some trainings in there that are utility specific that would go just to the utility, or vice versa in the general fund as well. But most of personnel and city-wide softwares are split in half.
Well, I'm curious about that because, like, of the amount of time that HR spends in hiring people, wouldn't that be the percentage of the number of employees in each of those areas? There's significantly more employees that are paid for and specifically support the city than that support the utility. So to me, it would make more sense that the amount of time HR spends would be appropriate to the amount of personnel they support in each of those divisions, rather than just 50-50 time, because there's two divisions. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a policy the city adopted or implemented many years ago. The
Okay.
city does not have a formal cost allocation plan,
Okay.
such as what you're describing, but it's something that it could do. It's a,
Curious about that.
but that's the rationale. Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm done, I got my
Wait till
question
Emily turns
answered.
me back on. She's kind of monitoring my behavior. And not to pile on, but I think it's a really good question because this came up, like around looking at the utility and stuff and how we allocate costs. And I think it would be a future-looking exercise to find out what the activity drivers are, what the cost drivers are. To me, just intuitively, it just, to Laura's point, head count's kind of a driver for the HR. And then there might be these other services, and we might want to look at that because it does have applicability to how we make sure that, we're allocating the right cost to the enterprise funds because they have a given set of customers and we don't want the taxpayers in general subsidizing those activities. So it might be worth, I'm not talking to get real sophisticated in our allocation methodology, but we might want to start thinking about, that cost driver kind of thing and say, this is what makes sense in this particular case.
Sure.
I'm not going to, it's not a requirement for this year, but just you might want to think about it for future budget years.
Absolutely. And I think that's a benefit of providing the data in this form so that you all can see how we are paying for our services.
Any other questions? Any questions from anybody here tonight? Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you for your time.
All right. I am Summer Fleming, the accounting manager, and I'll be going over the proposed budget for the finance department, starting with our mission statement. As I change slides. The finance department is committed to ensuring and maintaining the financial integrity and stability of the city, and to proactively plan for future growth through the responsible management of the city's finances. Our department core services consist of 5 programs. They are administration, which is the oversight of all programs, including establishing departmental goals and controls, financial policies, audit services, grant management, debt, and investments. The second program is budget. We prepare and manage the annual budget, including CIP funding, and provide quarterly financial analysis. The third program is accounting. That's a lot of our day-to-day operations. It includes payroll, accounts payable, general ledger, capital assets, and internal controls. The fourth program is procurement. We assist all departments with their purchasing needs while meeting legal requirements, including competitive purchasing, insurance verification, resource and contract management. And the fifth program is treasury. We're responsible for billing and collection services for the utility and all other city departments. So some recent accomplishments of the finance department include the GFOA awards that we talk about so often. We received the award for our 2020 annual comprehensive financial report and our most recent FY 2022 budget. I want to say that we strive for those awards because it ensures we're meeting the highest standards of transparency and full disclosure for our citizens. We also completed the city's first popular annual financial report, not to just receive a GFOA award, which we did submit to their program, but we wanted to produce a report that is readily accessible and easily understandable to the general public who don't have a background in public finance. We also completed the ARPA grant accounting and compliance reporting. We've solicited and awarded contracts for the $1 Million Street Maintenance Program, the Chartwell Lane Realignment Project, and the dewatering project. We also, earlier this year, awarded 9 engineering contracts for on-call consultants to design projects for the city over the next 4 years, negotiating hourly rates for that time period to create consistency in budgeting. Some performance measures we use in evaluating our department include receiving those GFOA awards and receiving a clean audit, maintaining the operating reserve in accordance with our financial management policy, and then some volume-based metrics such as the number of invoices processed and number of purchases with competitive requirements. So our proposed FY23 budget is a little over $690,000 in total. It's comprised mostly of personnel. We have 5 positions and currently 1 vacancy, which is the finance director. 13.5% is for professional services. That includes annual audit fees, appraisal district fees, and department trainings. And then less than 1% goes to our supplies, maintenance, and operating costs. Our department also is shared with the utility, so we have 45% of our total department cost is charged to the utility fund. Changes in our proposed budget from our current budget include an increase in personnel. The proposed budget includes a cost of living adjustment. Our supplies, maintenance, and operations remains pretty steady, and we have a decrease in professional services. This is due to sliding the internal controls audit to fiscal year 24, and I'll talk about that next in our project highlights. So one priority under the financial integrity pillar is to develop risk mitigation strategies, and a project that has been in process is regarding internal controls. We've already completed the internal control assessment field work in a prior fiscal year with the auditing firm RSM. They came in and documented all the processes and procedures for each department, and in March 2021, they gave us the final deliverable, which was the internal control framework. Since then, we've reviewed that framework and all their recommended controls with the departments and obtained sign-off by all the control owners. We're currently monitoring compliance with those recommended controls and documenting feedback from the different department control owners. So we plan to schedule an internal controls audit in FY24 for the prior period's compliance. Another project we will be focusing on next fiscal year is developing the 5-year forecast. We are actually in the process of purchasing the software that we plan on using to develop this forecast, and we'll be spending the next couple months inputting all the historical data and any assumptions into the software. That'll give us the first quarter to test that initial data and the output it provides, and our goal is to roll out the 5-year projection with our FY23 Q2 financial update. And another project that is started in prior fiscal years and is continuing is the procurement function. So with our procurement manager, we are utilizing the PO module in the finance department, specifically at year end to record encumbrances, and we've been revising the procurement policy. So the next steps are to finalize that procurement policy and develop standard operating procedures and training materials to roll out that PO module to each department to be utilizing on a regular basis. So those are 3 projects we'll be focused on in the next fiscal year. Yes.
Thank you. A little bit of bug dust. On the procurement system, and this may just be your graphic, it starts with a purchase order. Is there components to that system that start with a requisition and authorization for expenditure before it gets to a PO?
Yes, that's part of that purchase order graphic. It does start with the requisition. Right now, we're utilizing that in the finance department, where the departments will call our procurement manager with his requisition. He's able to put it into the PO module. The goal is to, after training and putting the policy together, to roll that out to the departments where they'll be able to go into the PO module themselves to enter requisitions with any quotes and backup, and it would route to the procurement manager and to everyone else in the workflow.
Yeah, and the reason I'm spending time on that is because it kind of goes back to, you know, the internal control framework, and I know we're calling that future thing an audit, and I'd love to have a conversation with y'all and the audit committee about the design of that project, but to make sure that the control owners say, here's what we consider the key control points in the procurement, you know, the purchase to pay cycle, to say that system is giving us good visibility on those key control points with overburdening us with a lot of extra administrative work. So those are some considerations that I'd like to see at the future look at how that all gets put together, but just food for thought.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Anybody else? Summer, I just had a quick question. So in the highlights that you provided some things that we're going to do in FY23, correct? 22, 23? The 5-year budget,
Yes, the project highlights,
software.
right. Those are 3 of our main projects, yes.
And are the costs associated with that, is that already included as part of your proposed budget? Are these additional things that?
So for the 5-year forecast, it was in this year's budget that we're purchasing the software, so there won't be any additional cost that we know of for developing that forecast after we've purchased the software, besides time. In the future year, we have everything we need for finishing the internal control framework and implementing that throughout all the departments and the documentation. The cost would come in FY24 after we have gotten quotes for the actual audit. So nothing in this year's budget. And procurement, no, there would be no additional costs besides our time and effort.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Thank you, Summer. You did a great job. Appreciate it. IT?
Yes.
Don't look so grim.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Lejeune. I'm the IT manager. I'll be covering the Information Technology Department overview today. So our mission statement: the information technology serves the city through a series of functions, including integrating hardware and software systems, providing cybersecurity and technology support, negotiating and managing IT-related contracts. We have 4 core services for our department. Includes IT administration, which covers asset management, replacement programs, documentation of hardware and software deployments, and user cybersecurity training, which we're all familiar with. Establishing departmental goals and controls, CGIS compliance, policies, change management, just to name a few. Networking, that covers all of the connectivity within the city, maintaining our VPN connections, handling the access control, and and security that we need to have within the network, managing of the phone system. And the support services, that's handling all the break fix, all the IT tickets, installation of published software patches, troubleshooting issues as they come up, and coordinating anything with vendors that we need to. With cybersecurity, just to name a few off the top, centralized management of mobile devices, maintaining a layered approach to security, access and permissions based on the rule of least privilege, log analysis, threat hunting, fish alert analysis, and incident response remediation.
And then what do you do after lunch?
Yeah. Just a few of our recent accomplishments. I've got a couple pages on that just to highlight. We've got our core network switch firmware that we upgraded. We deployed a VPN, which eliminated the need for some of our servers. Not totally just yet, but almost. Deployment of laptops due to COVID protocols for wastewater over at Fire Station number 3. The assessment mitigation regarding Log4j vulnerability that many organizations had to deal with recently, several months ago. Restoring a domain controller from backup. There was a patch that Microsoft put out, and we had to restore from previous day on that. So luckily our backups were well in hand. We also have been assisting with the City Hall Remodel project, handling any quoting or IT implementations regarding that project. And we deployed digital signatures for check signing, which made that process a little bit more efficient. I'm sure our city manager was very happy to get that. And then just a few more. We completed a successful CGIS audit in conjunction with our police department and DPS. Deployment of vulnerability scanner. Oversaw the Blue installation, which we're currently using infrastructure on for our streaming today. And deployment of new hardware with staff. We refreshed 6 copiers this year, incorporating them under one new lease agreement in order to save money. And we'd also deployed a SCADA viewer PC for utilities so they can always see what the SCADA system looks like on a daily basis. Just some performance measures. We're going to be developing new KPIs next fiscal year. So just off the top, the number of workstations you can see over previous years. We're in a 5-year replacement cycle with those, so that's why you'll see some ebb and flow on that. In terms of the age of the system, that's how we determine that. Number of IT tickets, we did deploy that back in September of 2019, so that's why you see a 2 there. And then you can see the gradual increase on that. As far as a breakdown of the budget, almost 2/3 of it is shared services. A lot of the services that a lot of the departments utilize is stored under the IT budget. And then a little bit over 1/3 of that is personnel costs, with the remaining carried out by capital outlay, professional services, and supplies, maintenance, and operations. And funding that is 40% from the enterprise fund, from utilities, and then 60% from general fund. And we are a department of 2 with 0 vacancies, thankfully. I do want to give a shout out to Jason McDonald, our network specialist. Without him, my day would be much longer. So for the proposed budget for next fiscal year, overall we have a decrease. And then you can see the changes there. We have an increase in personnel. We're dealing with very large numbers here, so the supplies and maintenance and operations, you'll see it's not 0, but it doesn't show up quite as good on the graph. And then we have a slight decrease in professional services and shared services with capital outlay. Project to highlight right now, aside from other things that other departments have mentioned, we are working in conjunction with our Public Works Department to convert over the work order system that they use as their ticketing system. Currently we use iWork, and we're going to be converting that over to Brightly. We've already started that, and we're going to be finishing within this fiscal year. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions from council? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Brian, you must have been thorough.
Thank you very much.
Great job. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And last but not least, Christina Pachocchio, the city secretary. I'd like to talk to you about, you're going to fix that? Thank you. Actually, I can do it from here, maybe. There we go. There you are. I'd like to talk to you about my budget for the coming year, 2022-23. Our mission statement is to ensure transparent and responsive government through appropriate recording and preservation of the city's legislative history and official records, to enhance service to the public, and to conduct fair and impartial city elections. Going over the department's core services, we have administration, where we oversee the department programs, establish department budgets, goals, and controls. Agendas and meeting management. You may be aware that we manage the council meetings for agendas and minutes, but we also manage all of the other boards and commissions as well. And that includes not only creating the agendas and writing the minutes, but also publishing that information, providing it on the website, and all of the other communications that go with that. We also manage the applications and onboarding process for our new board members. We're also the records management and open records officers. We manage the city council's records and all of the city hall's records in accordance to the Texas Local Government Code. We process the public information records that come in for the city side, not the police side. And we report those and respond to those in compliance with the Texas Public Information Act. We also oversee the elections administration for the city. Recent accomplishments. We have recently, with your assistance, updated our records management plan, and that has put us in compliance now with our Texas State Records Office. We've also just undertaken a monumental inventory of our paper records, and we've done this to get an understanding of what records that we had paper-wise, as well as to understand what their retention schedules were so that we can be destroying those as appropriately. And we've destroyed some of the records that we've had for many years. Another one of our accomplishments is our PIA requests. We've had an unprecedented number over the last couple of years. This year, I'm knocking on the wood, it's a lower number. We've got 60 this year thus far, but last year we had 193 requests. 86 in 2019, and 2019-20 rather, and 73 in 18-19. And since we've been tracking it the last 2 years, we've been able to have a turnaround rate of 6 days for the average PIA request that comes through the city secretary's office. We had our first in-time processing an orientation for our committee and board members this past year. I think it was a success. We were able to orient them to their new boards and give them an understanding of how the city works and what they can expect in their role. We also, Amanda and I, attained our registered municipal clerk certification, and we are currently eager and working towards our registered parliamentarian certification as requested by council. Here are a few performance measures that you might be interested in. As I indicated earlier, we have meetings, agendas, and minutes, not only for council, but for all of our boards and commissions. And I won't go over those figures with you, but you can see how they've progressed from year to year. We also monitor the number of ordinances and resolutions, and those numbers are provided for you. As I indicated earlier, we have our public information requests. Those are the numbers that we've received thus far. And the very last line of operational excellence was to indicate, again, a little bit more on the turnaround time that the City Secretary Office is providing these documents. You may recall in previous presentations that with PIA requests, we have up to 10 days to either respond with the requested information or at least communicate with the requester and let them know when we anticipate to have that information to them. We have 10 days to do that, and we've been able to keep it under 6, and we're hoping to continue that and maybe lessen it. This is our proposed budget for next year, $241,690. We are a small staff, Amanda and I alone, and a bulk of our budget is taken up from personnel costs. We have less than 1% of our budget to supplies, maintenance, and operations, and 15% for professional services. And that includes things like our codification costs, our dues and subscriptions, traveling, seminars, et cetera, or training and seminars, meetings, elections, and recording and reporting histories of the various ordinances and such. Changes to the budget. Personnel budget is showing it's going up. I understand part of that is due to COLA. Our supplies and maintenance and operations budget is relatively the same, but you will notice the professional service budget number has gone down. And I found that intriguing because looking at some of the line items, they had increased. For example, some of our SAP budget items last year were sent this year into operations, so some line items increased because of that. We also, as I mentioned earlier, Amanda and I are going straight ahead into our training for parliamentarian certification. So we've got extra classes and training and exam fees that have also increased some other line items. We're also increasing our, including Hill Country Weekly in our newspaper notifications, so that's increased one of our line items. So why is our number going down? Well, the biggest culprit is the elections cost. Last year, we budgeted $38,000 because we anticipated a November election with all 3 counties and May election, and we didn't have any of those. But this year, we're only anticipating 1 election, and that will be in May. And that's only $7,000. So that bulk of that cost decrease is due to that, election costs. Budget considerations. Now, you may have noticed I did provide you with an updated presentation PowerPoint slide packet. And the reason I did that was because I changed some of the order of some things, and I wanted to make sure that nothing came off the list. So you'll see that I have this items that we've considered into this year's budget. Now, the first item was a volunteers recognition event. That is actually included in this year's budget. And what we wanted to do was to make sure that all of our volunteers recognize or realize how much we recognize their efforts in all of the meetings and services they provide to our city. So we're going to start, at least for the first time for me, to try to have an event that honors them. You see the recodification of Code of Ordinances. This was originally put in the packet because we anticipated that we would be moving forward with this year. After further discussion, it may be something that gets put on next year's agenda. I didn't want it to fall off the list because I had already included it in the agenda. And the reason it may come off the list is, well, let me take a step back. A recodification of our Code of Ordinances, something that best practices is to do on a basis. Since we've started as a city, to my understanding, we've never had our Code of Ordinances reviewed. And the process for that is for it to go through the attorneys. Like right now, we're moving into Municode. That would be the company that would manage it. And they would look at our code from beginning to end, making sure that all of the older codes are up to date, that all of it is consistent, and that that everything is pertinent, that, you know, things say when they reflect it's going someplace else, that that item is actually where it's supposed to be. The reason we're pulling it, more than likely from this request this year, is that we have a UDC that is still under work. Right now, it's being viewed by our P&Z committee, and then it's going to go to council. We have no idea how long that process is going to be. And should council decide, we are going to possibly have an update of our charter. So both of these things would be imperative to have up to date and ready to go in one full swoop. So you may see this later on this year or perhaps next year. The last item is digitization. Now, this one may have shocked you when you saw the original paper for it. We understood at the time of the creation of this presentation that we needed to do an on-premise version, which means that we would have to buy the whole kit and caboodle at a very large fee for the software. We've since found, through the assistance of Denton, Navarro, law offices, that we are not held to a specific law that recently came out. So we are allowed to use the cloud version, which is a much cheaper version. And we have already had this particular budget item in this year's budget. And when we looked at all of the costs that the cloud version would do, I mean, it's hot off the presses. We actually come right in line with the software, or excuse me, the budget that we requested last year and was approved. So our plan is to move forward with this, getting the cloud version of the digitization software. And it will provide for us the ability to have a better understanding of our digital records. I indicated we did a paper inventory. Right now, this will provide us the same type of improved accessibility to the records that we have. It'll include ability to have destruction dates embedded in with the documents and workflows that are part of this particular software. An associated part of this digitization program is also a scanning component, which was not included, and this is something that is going up for your, it's not included in the budget right now, but I am requesting that you consider it as part of the funds that have remained, still can be utilized. And the scanning is where we take those paper documents that are currently deteriorating and at risk for fire, water damage, all of those things, and incorporate them into this software package. Now, the cost that I have right there was based on quotes that were provided prior to the inventory, that paper inventory that we performed throughout the city. I'm anticipating that that number will come down dramatically. I just have not had those third parties come in to to look at again those documents to confirm that that number will come down. But basically what it will be is, well, let me take a step back. We had an inventory done throughout the city, and I went with each department and reviewed all of the documents that were determined, and we determined which ones would have to be digitized, which ones weren't. And it was a big difference than when the third-party companies came out and gave us a quote. It's significantly smaller. So as I said, we're anticipating that to be a smaller dollar value. And I believe that is my last slide, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
On the digitization, was that in-house, or is a company going to come in and?
There are some departments that would require in-house scanning and monitored scanning. There are some PD records that would require that, and some finance records. But the bulk of the other records can be off-site.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else?
You were,
Questions from Roy? Do you have something?
no, I was just going to make a comment because it's late, I'm asleep. You know, when you said that some of these records are at risk for water damage and fire, it reminded me that, and it's been about a year or so ago, we were driving through Mason, Texas, and their courthouse, somebody, an arsonist, burnt their courthouse. And all of their records, their historical records, going way back, were destroyed in that fire. So it is an important thing.
Yes, and that is a concern. We had an event maybe a year and a half ago when there was a potential tornado, and we all had to come into this room as city staff, and all I could think about were the records that we didn't have backups for, that they were just there, and very concerning. So it is a high priority.
Anybody else? Any other questions from anybody here tonight?
Thank you.
Thanks, Christina.
Can she get back in that door?
That concludes the department presentations for tonight, Mayor and Council. He's pulling up. We thought it would be, budget update. Information that you received, what has changed, which is not. Oh, thank you. The general fund has not changed a whole lot since the presentation that we provided on the 7th of July. But again, from an overview perspective, this is where we are right now. So from an operating basis, revenues are exceeding expenditures by, again, that $643,000 mark. So we are structurally balanced from an a current revenues and current expenditures standpoint. Embedded in the budget are our transfers to reserves per adopted policy that we talked about last time. So we have an equipment replacement reserve that will provide a net about $229,000 to that funds for ongoing and future replacement. $260,000 would be transferred to the operating reserve to maintain the council policy of 6 months of operating reserves. And the restricted reserves are primarily those court funds that Judge Keller talked about earlier tonight. We do have a few pieces of equipment in IT, PD, and Public Works that are in the budget already for $140,000. So as of the packet you received Tuesday, we are from a total surplus deficit to the good by $15, which is pretty much bullseye for where we were at this time. It was actually pretty amazing that once we made our updates, we were that close. But that's where we are heading into the remainder of your discussions again as of right now. We do have in the budget currently a transfer of unallocated reserves of $2.6 million for drainage projects and the Post Oak project, which we talked about previously. If those were to be approved from the unallocated reserve, that would leave a remainder, excuse me, of $1.2 million of unallocated reserves. So that's reserves over and above your 6-month operating reserve policy as of this budget. So changes from the July version received, again, not too many. We reconcile the transfer reserves to meet on the revenue side just to match what those capital projects were. On the expenditure side, in the draft budget, we've added a mechanic position, which is split between the general fund and the utility fund. And there's a bit of an offset from 2 patrol officers that we would add to backfill those school resource officer positions. We included 9 months worth of cost for this year, given the recruitment time involved. So that took a little bit off of those 2 positions. So that the net of the personnel changes is that 17,809 figure. We added some supplies for that as well. We provided additional funds for police tasers so that each officer will have his or her own unit. Christina talked about the volunteer appreciation event. We increased the city planning contract by $10,000 for the pending UDC process upcoming. And we added a on-call building inspector contract that would provide services in the event that current staff cannot maintain the workload due to either increased workload or to potential leaves. We're thin in that area, so this would be an on-call service that would provide supplemental services as needed for building inspection. We added $15,000 for PC replacement for next year as of right now. And again, we adjusted the operating reserve to get to that 6-month policy. So those are some of the changes that you saw from the July 7th version to the version that you received this week and our current draft in the general fund. So again, this is the list of new funded items that are in your draft right now. We've talked about a lot of these already. We have I believe it's 5 drainage projects in for a total of about $2.8 million. We have the Post Oak project the council approved here for the tax dot match here several weeks ago. Again, SRO positions, a mechanic, we've talked about those, the operating reserve, most of these we talked about already, but these are the items that have been included that are new or additional from the current year fiscal year 22 budget to the fiscal year 23 draft budget.
Two different numbers for tasers. Which one is it?
Oh, so the total is 11,200. We added, that's a good catch. We added 8,400 to get to that 11,200. So we had about 30, whatever that delta is, in the budget already, and we added the 8,400 to get to. I have the same question.
Okay. Only buy what we need, but
Yeah. So it was just reconciling that cost. We didn't have quite enough the first time. So these are the items that are still under review at this point in time. The first item is to embark on a new fire utilization study. We have the bulk of the funds remaining from the current year budget, so the $18,000 would be added to embark on a new and revised study in the upcoming budget. There are 4 roadway CIP projects that were scheduled to begin design in fiscal year 23. We essentially moved up the Post Oak project in lieu of those. Those could either be included into a potential long-term debt financing structure, or if the council wanted to use additional unallocated reserves to start those sooner, that's an option for the council. Christina talked about the digitization program. This cost will go down based on what she just said, so that we would include just the maintenance portion of about 13,000 rather than the 73,000 you see up there, if that were to be approved by council. Third-party scanning, Christina touched on, and the recodification as well. There's a proposed on-site fuel station in Public Works that's under review. A mobile surveillance system in the police department, still under review. And if there's additions, or questions, I'd probably call on the departments to speak to those specific projects. But
Can someone describe what that is?
I could try, but I think I would defer to the chief to describe better what a mobile surveillance search system is.
Or the
lieutenant, as the case may be.
Good evening, council. Questions, yes.
Can you just at a very high level tell me what the mobile surveillance search and rescue system is? Is it a drone that someone can sit in, or what?
It's actually, it is called a photo kite, sir. It is a tethered drone that's not classified as an actual drone because you don't fly it around or do anything. It's a tethered item that reaches at a certain height and does an actual 360 surveillance or camera view that we can't see at a high altitude.
This has infrared capability and
Yes.
that kind of stuff? And so you don't have to go through all the pilot training and all that kind of stuff?
That is
to
correct,
operate
sir.
this?
Some of the benefits is the fact that we don't have to go get certified. Anyone can use it. If we wanted Public Works to use it for certain things, HR for communication purposes or events, anybody can operate it, and it's real simple to use, and battery life is a lot longer than an actual drone.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? Good. All right.
Most of the remaining items were equipment items that I think were on your list the first time back in the July 7th presentation. Have not been included in the budget yet, but still up for both internal discussion with the council as well, the mower, the trailer, the man lift, and then we included a potential civic center as an item for discussion as well in the budget process. Obviously, that at this point, that has not been included in the draft budget. So again, we presented most of this at the last presentation as well. What are the major movers, the major changes from fiscal year 22 to 23? I'm not sure if anything, I don't think anything has changed on the revenue side from the previous discussion, but again, this is just the difference between the adopted budget and the draft budget. On the expenditure side, most of those are the same too. They mainly embark on some of the projects that we included under the funded list that we just discussed. We did add in the transfer to the SAP fund just so the council could see the difference between what we transferred for projects last year versus what the current draft proposes this year. So last year, the adopted budget had about $1.2 million in projects, and this year, as in the current draft, we're at about $2.9 million. So that difference is about $1.7 million, and that's what you see on the screen before you. Christina talked about the drop in election services for the coming year, and you can see the rest of the list. Again, just what has changed from the adopted budget to the current fiscal year 23 draft budget. Same in the utility fund. We haven't talked too much about the utility fund yet, but you have received draft details for that fund. So again, this just summarizes what's changed since, I guess that was the July, was it 21st meeting, I think, is when we talked about the utility fund as an overview. Very minor. Again, the utility fund side of the mechanic position, we adjusted the GBRA water purchase cost modestly just to get in line with the quotes that we received from them. We did include the beginning of a wastewater treatment design process feasibility study. That would be impact fee eligible, which is where this first portion is proposed to be funded from. and a slip line for, I forget which area, Grant could probably fill us in, a minor maintenance project, and some vehicle replacements would come from the utility equipment replacement fund as proposed. And if you want to know what the gap items are, I'll defer to Summer, but those have been adjusted per the budget as well to reconcile the changes in assets to accumulated depreciation as part of our gap-based utility fund budget. So thus far, we have not changed the calendar yet. So this is the same calendar you received again at previous sessions. We of course were scheduled to present the tax rates tonight. We hope to do that certainly by the 18th and provide you updates as soon as practical before that time. But if we can get some numbers soon, we're hoping to stay on track to set the maximum tax rates, set the public hearings on August 18th, and then we would proceed with a concluding budget workshop on the 1st after we have our other department presentations next week. We'll provide our year-end projections, which is our third quarter analysis at that September 1st meeting as well. September 15th would be the public hearings for the tax rate and the proposed budget, as well as the first reading for the budget. And finally, the budget ordinance second reading and final reading would be on September 22nd. Again, at this time, we haven't scheduled any changes. Again, depending on what we hear from the county, if we are required to have special meetings to catch up, so to speak, we'll inform you of that. But that's where we are right now.
Go ahead.
When will council receive, or do we have a date, the final, I guess, budget to be presented where we can discuss and consider removing or adding things to the budget?
Mm-hmm. So council can, according to the calendar, I think I consider September 1st kind of your markup session, as it were, where you propose any amendments, et cetera. But what you have right now is the current draft, and what you receive as far as the detail is the budget itself. So you'll just be provided updates as we go along. But
Yeah, I guess my main concern is having a place for discussion and consideration session where we're able to mark it up versus just having presentations given to us.
mm-hmm. And again, like the city manager said, we can take guidance at any time these meetings, especially outside. But again, September 1st is an open date that we can have wide open discussion on those items and any follow-up that the council requests.
I have a question, Greg.
Go ahead.
Don't we normally do special sessions for these things?
If needed. I think what Scott was trying to schedule this out, so we only had, and I think on the calendar you have one special meeting now identified
22nd.
on the 22nd of September.
So that one's a for sure special meeting that day.
Right, because we are required to have 2 readings on the budget ordinance. And we're certainly amenable to as many meetings as the council wants to have. We're, as the mayor said, trying to be respectful of everyone's time, but that would not be a problem on our end.
Well, I know that you started scheduling this way in advance so that we could conclude it with mostly the scheduled council meetings that we have, first, third Thursdays of the month. But now that we've run into the challenge with Kendall and Comal counties releasing their data, it's kind of crunched our timeline back up. So, any other questions?
No.
So, kind of going off of Councilwoman Minchow, I wonder if there's an opportunity in like the next council meeting. I know we're going to have, I'm looking at your calendar, you have it so that we'll have more presentations, right? The next
2 more.
Which one? It's a Public Works and?
PD.
Public safety.
Public safety, okay. Would it be possible to also include a discussion item about the budgets that we heard tonight at the next meeting, so we could have a markup session just on the ones that, after we've heard their presentations. Next week, have a markup session for those, and then hear the next ones, and then come back and hear the next one, you know. Because I think that would address maybe some of Councilwoman Menchow, because by the time September 1st comes around, I'm going to have forgotten everything. I had my notes. I would like to have that opportunity at the next meeting to do any markups if possible, just on those budgets that we've heard about already.
Sure. Yeah. Council discretion, of
Right,
course, but
that-
absolutely.
I totally agree with that.
So for clarification purposes, we can absolutely do that. So when y'all talk about a markup session, you're talking about going through this level of detail, right?
Well, not no one presenting it again, but having the ability to say, give guidance and say, can we please remove this, add this,
Perfect.
give $56,000 to the court security, you know, just as an example, directly in a discussion.
No, it's great. I just
Separate
want to
from
make
the
sure we're giving you the right
presentations,
deliverables to make those comments off of.
Yeah, like just that. And just on the ones that we had heard previously.
Not a problem.
Anything else?
That's all I have.
Thanks,
Thank
Scott.
you.
Just want to say everybody did a really good job today. Thank you.
That completes the reports from staff and committees that we had on the agenda for tonight. We'll move now to requests and announcements. Is there any council member that has an announcement that they'd like to make? No? Emily?
I have one. There's a 5K that's going to be happening next Saturday, the Smash Dash, and it supports one of our residents here in Fair Oaks Ranch who has SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. And you can look it up online and register, but it starts at the club and ends at the club, and usually has a really good turnout. So that's on Saturday, the 13th, and it starts at 7:30 in the morning. So I encourage you guys to spread the word. It's for a good cause.
Are they going to have any of the roads blocked off? Do you know?
No.
No, they don't. They don't stop. We run down the parkway, but they still let traffic through.
Any other announcements? Tobin, anything to add?
Just one comment. We've been pushing out messaging, as everyone has seen, about some of the minor delays associated with the bulk pickup. We'll continue to push those messages out. You know, we're at the mercy of some of the delays on the vendor side, but we're doing best we can to manage that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any council members that have any items that they'd like added to a future agenda for a council meeting, other than what we've already discussed tonight? All right. We will convene into executive session tonight. Shouldn't take very long, but we will convene pursuant to Section 551.101 of the Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code. A quorum of the governing body hereby convenes into closed session. We'll do this reference Section 551.071, cause number 2022. Charlie 101978, Bernie Ranch Estates, LLC versus City of Fair Oaks Ranch. And then also reference Section 551.072, deliberation regarding real property. And this is reference, the City Council will meet in closed session, deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property that may be considered for future location of water and wastewater system improvements. Christine, I have the time now is 9:08. We're moving out of open session into executive session. Christine, I have the time now is 9:29, and we are back in open session. During our time in executive session, there were no decisions made that would require consideration or discussion back in open session. Christine, is there anything else that we need for tonight?
No, sir.
Covered everything. Tobin, anything else?
No, sir.
And Christine, I have the time now is 9:30. We are adjourned.